I haven't quite worked out how to get the sound. I need sound
That's
on
right. That's okay.
other, and it's a bit complicated.
It says here we're up and running.
Okay, well, I think we can probably Slicker app is, I haven't quite worked out how to get the sound. I need sound on
Right. That's okay.
other, and it's a bit complicated.
It says here we're up and running.
Okay, we're now getting the feedback again.
Okay, we're good to go. So welcome to Beaconsfield Town Council meeting. Good evening to my councillors and members of the public who are able to join us tonight. Sorry, a bit of feedback there. Is that better? Is that okay? All right, good. So we have a full agenda tonight, so I'd like to invite all the councillors present to call out their names, the wards they represent and any position they hold in committees. The clerk will call your name out. It's probably the best way to do it because on Zoom it could be any one of us at any time. So over to you. Shall I start? You're on mute, Alexa, at the moment. So my name is Alex, Councillor Dunlop, Alex Dunlop, and I'm on the Central Board. So we have a full agenda. I'm the Mayor of Beaconsfield.
I think one of us needs to. I'll start.
Okay,
as I seem to be clockwise. Councillor Graham Corney, representing West Ward, and Chair of Planning.
Thank you, Graham. I'll call out the names. Anita. Can you unmute Anita, Alexa, please? Everybody's muted. Sorry, Anita. No.
I'm unmuted now. I'm so sorry. Councillor Anita Cranmer. I'm Chair of Community and I am the North Ward.
Councillor Roy Foster.
Good evening, Roy Foster. Can you hear me?
Yes, indeed.
Yes. Jolly good. Sorry, I've got nothing on screen, so I do apologise, but at least
that's all right.
I can be heard perhaps. Thank you.
Councillor Hogan.
I'm Councillor Patrick Hogan and I represent the West Ward.
Councillor Jackson.
Hi, I'm Councillor Jackson and I represent the West Ward. I'm on planning and on communities.
Councillor Chris Owen.
Chris Owen, Councillor for West Ward. I'm on resources and planning.
Councillor Sandy Saunders.
Good evening, I'm Councillor West Ward and I'm Deputy Chairman of Planning and Deputy Chairman of Community.
Councillor Lorna, sure. You're on mute, Lorna.
Good evening, Councillor Lorna Shaw for the North Ward and Chair of the Governance Committee.
Councillor Alistair Pike.
Good evening, Alistair Pike, Deputy Mayor, Chair of Resources, and I represent the South East Ward.
Councillor Rita Bala.
I'm Rita Bala, I represent Central Ward and I'm on planning and open spaces.
And Councillor Philip Basterman.
Philip Basterman, I represent the West Ward and I'm on the Resources and Open Spaces committees.
Right, I believe that is everybody. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the agenda for tonight. Can I ask the clerk for apologies for absence, please?
I have apologies from Councillor Reid, who had a long-standing engagement.
Okay, thank you. You're a little bit quiet there, Clark.
Okay, I'll try and speak up.
That's better, thank you. Declarations of interest.
Sorry, Chairman.
I do apologise, Councillor Hogan.
Apologies. In the standing orders of the council, all councillors for the area, which includes any district, unitary, county councillors, are supposed to be invited to the meeting. There's about 10 unitary councillors covering the Beaconsfield area because the parish is divided between the two electoral divisions of Beaconsfield and Gerrards Cross. So as I say, there's about 10 unitary councillors should have been invited. Unfortunately, except for those who are on this town council, none others have been invited. Unitary councillors from in other areas, for example, regularly attend Gerrards Cross Town Council. So I don't understand quite why there's been such an omission. because obviously it would help if you had those councillors attending these meetings as well.
And absolutely, for the record, we have, I think, 6 attending unitaries here tonight, don't we? Out of the 10. So we will make it a point to invite those unitaries to the next town council meeting, but thank you for bringing it to the attention. If just for future reference, if there is an omission from a meeting like a town council meeting, please you could bring it to the attention certainly earlier on in the day or even preceding the meeting. There's not much we can do about it at this point, but thank you for the attention to that detail. Moving on to section 2, declarations of interest. Oh, sorry, excuse me, Councillor Cranmer. You're on mute, Councillor Cranmer. There we go.
Apologise. Yes, I should like to declare that I am the chair of Better Connected Beaconsfield, a charity in Beaconsfield, which may get mentioned during the course of this meeting.
Thank you very much. Councillor Basterman.
Yeah, I'd just like to declare an interest in the Parkway Strip by virtue of my employment.
Thank you. Councillor Pike.
Yes, I'd like to advise everyone that I'm a member of the Beaconsfield Society and also a trustee of the Reading Room.
Thank you. Any other members of the Beaconsfield Society? Councillor Saunders.
Yes, I'm Vice President of the Beaconsfield Society. I'm also Chairman of the Community Association, which is a user or whose members use the community bus.
Thank you very much. Right, I think we've covered that. Thank you very much.
Sorry, Chairman.
Sorry, Councillor Hogan.
Chairman, I just wish to declare that I am not a member of the Beaconsfield Society, nor am I a local businessman or shopkeeper who expects that I might benefit from the Buy in Beaconsfield initiative. And therefore, I will be able to consider item 13 in an impartial manner.
So you're saying you've got no declaration of interest?
In item 13, yes.
Or any declaration of interest?
I have no declaration of interest in any other matter in this agenda.
That's fine. That's all we wanted to know. Thank you. Moving on to 3, public questions. Please, so we did have 2 questions. Are they questions you read out, Clark, or was it?
Read them out. The first one I had was from Peter Sanders, who wanted to have an update noted on the certificate of lawfulness application for the water fountain. Peter and I have discussed this, and I'm waiting on Bucks Council at the moment. They are the landowner, and they are going to issue a license for this land use. And as part of the application for a certificate of lawfulness, I have to have the permission of the landowner to do that. So I have been in discussion with them. There's information been passed back in early July, I think, and holidays have got in the way. So I know that Peter is chasing that as well. I gave an update on this recently to the Resources Committee. Nothing's changed, but we are chasing it. And Peter was keen to keep it in your mind's eye. And also late breaking news on that. He did email me this afternoon, and they are in the process of getting quotes for the installation of that work. So they will keep us apprised of that as we go. The second question was from a Rachel Ferguson, who had previously been in correspondence with me about air monitoring, and I had supplied her with the report this year from Buckinghamshire Council on air monitoring, and advised it's not something that the town council have the resources or responsibility for. She came back and she has asked if what the town council's view on air monitoring is, and whether you would be prepared to request further air monitoring in Beaconsfield town, because we do have poor air quality in this area. And I believe that Councillor Hogan had...
I was going to say, Councillor Hogan has some something to report on this. So Councillor Hogan, please.
Well, yes, because, well, in response to Rachel's question, I can advise that the former district council did undertake air monitoring in a number of locations across the district. Notably, just for illustration, around Ivor, where the motorways, the M25 and M4 converge, there is what's called an air quality management area. That is an official designation, and actually for motorways, it falls under the responsibility of the Highways England. Now, in that particular case, when at South Bucks, air quality used to be within what was called the environment portfolio, but at some point it passed into what was my portfolio at the district council, which was healthy communities. And in that period, I was able to have designated by the Secretary of State an adjoining air quality management area in Ivor. And because it didn't cover the motorways, it would actually be administered by, well, now it would be Buckinghamshire Council. And that was because the very great number of large heavy vehicle movements in the Ivor area, there's a lot of industry there. And the monitoring had revealed that the particulates level in that area went beyond a certain level, which is why you were able to get an air quality management area designated. And when you designate it, you can then start what they call an action plan, where you actually identify measures to improve the air quality. Now, as far as Beaconsfield goes, is there were monitoring points, I believe they were in the Old Town, and there was also one down towards Holtspur. Now, my understanding is that those never reached the particulate levels which would generate an air quality management area. Even the M40, I think, as it goes through Beaconsfield, is not covered by an air quality management area under Highways England. However, what I was going to say is that obviously we have been, there's been a lot of discussion locally about the HS2 construction traffic, which will now be going through the London End roundabout and not down the Relief Road. And I would suspect, you know, it is more important than ever probably that there is monitoring in Beaconsfield of air quality. So on that basis, what I was going to say is, Councillor Cranmer confirmed this, but I believe it probably does fall within the environment portfolio of Buckinghamshire Council, which would be Councillor Bill Chappell. I can't be 100% certain because there's so many portfolios at Buckinghamshire Council. It's hard to know what covers what, but I would think so. What I was going to suggest was that I would be quite happy to liaise with Rachel and at least find out which officers and which cabinet member at Buckinghamshire Council is responsible for air quality monitoring now, with the intention that we should actually ensure that there is air quality monitoring happening in Beaconsfield on the A40 and more specifically towards the motorway end of the town.
Thank you, Councillor Hogan. That's excellent news. As you know, the clerk has quite a lot on her plate at the moment, and for you to take ownership of that is great. So thank you for doing that, and we look forward to hearing what sort of response you get and the relative people, what they say. I think this leads forward onto when we were doing research and the articles about the local plan and the fact that there was going to be quite a build-up of traffic, and that the atmosphere could be quite unhealthy at that point. So this will definitely be good to be seen that we are doing this. I think it's the right thing to do, and especially with the big lorries coming through London End, as you point out. So thank you for that. Are there any other comments on that? No, good. We move on to item 4 of the agenda, minutes of the last meeting. To confirm and sign the minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of June. Does any member of the council have any comments on these minutes? No? Good. Okay, we'll approve those. Thank you very much. And we move on to agenda 5, matters arising not covered elsewhere in the agenda. So matters arising not covered elsewhere. Okay. Mayor's report. The bit you've all been waiting for. So I have a report. It's brief. We've got a lot to get through, but I'd like to yet again say good evening to my councillors, members of the public able to join us this evening. I don't need to tell you what an extraordinary year we've had up to date. Most social events have either been cancelled or somehow adjusted to being run with limited numbers or using internet communication like Zoom. My first such event, which I did under COVID, was a Zoom meeting, and I was invited to the Bourne End Cubs Zoom meeting back in May. I was subjected to a severe question and answer session by the Cubs, such as what was the best thing I'd ever done as a mayor and the worst thing I'd ever done as a mayor. And one Cub asked if I was a millionaire. I was a bit bemused by his question. He'd been watching apparently his mum and dad's television and had watched an advert of turning gold to cash on his TV and was looking at my gold gong here over my neck and had done some mental arithmetic and decided it was worth millions. I felt safer at that point being behind the computer screen than I was if I'd been in front of them. I was invited to join with our MP, Joy Morrissey, and other dignitaries to celebrate VJ Day at St Mary's Church. This was a very good event, actually. It was very well organised, social distancing and all the other bits that go with that, but it was very moving and very poignant, and got to meet some very elderly veterans who had some fantastic stories to share. It was an honour to attend. As much as many events have been cancelled, please be assured the Town Council is working hard in the background. We have kept all our planning meetings up to date, and where possible have been holding committee meetings as to the council requirements. We're slowly introducing much needed new benches around Beaconsfield and have installed an MVAS unit to warn drivers of their speed. This is a mobile vehicle activated sign, and we have various locations as to where it can be installed around Beaconsfield. We're in the process of putting together a design to make the public toilets in the Old Town dementia friendly, and that's moving forward, which is great. There are, of course, more serious issues of HS2 and the relief road on the A355. These are both of concern to residents and councillors of Beaconsfield, and we're going to be looking into discussing and hopefully finding a solution on getting this relief road opened at some point. So thank you very much. Moving forward, I'd like to note the minutes from the following committees. The two committees were, the chairs of the two committees were for Councillor Graham Corney, the Planning Committee for the minutes from the 7th of July, 6th of August 2020. Please, Graham.
Yes, excuse me. Thank you, Mayor. I don't believe there are any matters arising. Of particular note, actually, within the course of those meetings was the fact that and we're still processing matters with regard to Seeley's Walk, where the residents have taken upon themselves to occupy what appears to be council land. I believe it's actually owned by Buckinghamshire Council rather than our good selves. They've effectively extended their gardens right up to the footpath. And I believe the matter is still continuing. I'm not entirely sure whether anybody from Buckinghamshire Council has seen the, Alexa, you may have some more information with regard to that.
I just wanted to say that Councillor Shaw actually had further complaints about more activity down there only yesterday.
Right.
So we have been sending someone to have a look at that today and to report that. But the encroachment team at Bucks are in touch with a number of properties in that area, and I believe are enforcing. But I haven't seen anything happen as yet.
No. But one thing of note that within the planning is the, because people, the council are not able to attend and not look at sites, it appears that, not in every case, but in some cases, there is quite a lot of submission of new additional plans on the basis of the fact that the previous plans have been accepted, and really pushing the boat out, if I may put it in that context. So we are looking at it very carefully. I'm particularly concerned that we have received no response whatsoever from Buckinghamshire Council, as far as I'm aware, to the extent that I don't know whether in fact they take into account what we're saying. And the last suggestion I had was that we, in fact, had a meeting with the Buckinghamshire Council representative to determine exactly what they did with regard to our comments, because we all of us spend quite a lot of time looking at these things, take the views of the public are trusting us, and apparently there doesn't seem to be any feedback.
Councillor Hogan has
yes,
hand up.
a comment to make. Yeah.
Well, it was just, I recall at the beginning of this council period that the clerk to the planning committee used to follow up on any comments that the committee made and report back and say, yes, this particular application which you commented on or objected to has been approved or has been rejected or whatever, so that you did actually have feedback as a committee as to what was happening. I'm not clear that that happens anymore or has happened for a considerable time, but it certainly was very valuable because, as you say, the members of the planning committee spend a lot of time looking at plans and things and believing that their responses have gone off into the ether and nobody takes any notice of them. And actually being able to see that your comments have been taken into account is quite valuable. But all that information about an application is available online, and it is possible, obviously, for the clerk to the committee to actually feed back to you the success or otherwise of those applications. I think historically it was always thought that the district would be able, and probably Councillor Saunders would know about this through SBALC. I know some parishes felt that they should get a detailed blow-by-blow report back from the council on every planning application. But I think that that has never come about, not only because there's a lack of resource to do it, but also I think the computer systems just are unable to identify all the particular parishes and wards and so on. So it is a 6 of one and a half a dozen of the other, but I think the town council can help itself. And that's my experience from when we had the previous administrative assistant, Diane.
If I may ask, Councillor Hogan, with your experience at South Bucks and now in Unitary, really it's a question for Councillor Reid because he was involved with the planning quite a level at South Bucks. The process, as Councillor Corney mentions, is that an objection is put forward by town council. Just briefly, the process goes to the planning committee at South Bucks or to now the Bucks Council. Is processed, and if there's a cause for upholding any objection from the parish council, is it then returned back? Is that response then sent back to the chairman of that planning department to parish? Because surely that would be the response required.
Well, what actually happens is, first of all, probably only 5% of planning applications go to the planning committee. Most of them are dealt with by officers under delegated powers. But every application has an officer report produced, quite lengthy reports, in fact, considerably longer than reports we're used to at town. And those will record every objection, the parish objection, and every objection from every person who's objected. And they will actually, in that report, detail a response to those objections. So as I say, all that information is available not just to the town council, but to any member of the public simply by going onto the website. So, one could actually see. But the other thing, of course, is that objections in planning, I mean, for example, people saying I object to this because it's going to affect the value of my house. Those are not planning objections. And indeed, if the objections are not planning objections, then obviously they won't be taken into account.
Of course. So, Councillor Corney, at least they are being minuted because it feels like nothing's being done. But
yes, I understand what Councillor Hogan is saying, and indeed he's quite correct. The officer's report is on the website for us to view, but from what I've seen of individual cases, the comments that we have made, whilst they may have been taken into account, have not been commented on. That would I know I can cite particular cases. All I'm concerned about is here we are as a town council, we're spending a lot of time, a lot of resource on commenting on local applications. And so far as I can see, these are not necessarily taken into account. Now, Councillor Hogan said that the case officer does take this into account. Okay, nobody has come back to me, as far as I'm aware, for further comments or queries or whatever. I just feel that as a, if you like, a consultee planning division, if you like, we are almost wasting our time. That's where I'm coming from, which I think is terribly sad if that is the case, because of the amount of time that all of us are spending. I may be wrong, and as I understand it, Vibber has tried to arrange a meeting with the representatives from Buckinghamshire, but so far hasn't been successful in actually arranging the meeting for whatever reason. I don't know.
Well, can we push that forward, Councillor?
I would suggest, and Councillor Cranmer would probably agree with me, the most sensible thing would be for the town clerk to write to the cabinet member for planning, who's Warren White, and Warren would be very pleased, I'm sure, to ensure that, I mean, for example, there have been courses run to help town councillors and parish councillors understand how planning works. I know I've been to an SBALC meeting, and Sandy will know that, you know, planning is a very popular subject at SBALC and talking about it, and there have been presentations. I believe even Councillor John Reid went at least once to SBALC to present on planning. So, you know, it's a question, just ask the question. But as I say, I think, you know, don't, you know, go to the top, go to Warren White. He's a great guy, and I'm sure he will get something sorted for you.
Thank you, Councillor Hogan. Councillor Cranmer.
Yes, and I would suggest as well going to the chairman of our planning committee, who is Councillor Trevor Eggleton, who can answer the questions that you're posing, Councillor Corney, and put you in touch with a relevant officer who might be able to answer the questions that we need answered. So I think you've got two lines of inquiry.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
And you approved the minutes, didn't you? Yes, we've done that. Good.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Moving on to the Resources Committee, Councillor Pike.
Yes, the most recent meeting we had was actually very recent, on the 20th of August, and the minutes have been distributed, I think, in the last day or so. We had a number of items on the agenda which were fairly significant, but I think just to pull out the two or three major points, the first being that for the year ended in March 2020, despite the serious deficit in income from town hall lettings, we knew about this so far in advance that we were able to cut back on expenditure and balance the budget by the end of the year. The situation with lettings obviously going forward is somewhat uncertain, and as a consequence, that may well have a major impact on what we can expect and look forward to in the future. The other point that was discussed was the future of the community bus, which of course, as we know, has not been running for some time. And the question really comes up as to whether or not we should be thinking about bringing it back and continuing the trial at a point in the future when it is safe to do so. This was discussed in some detail following a report presented by the project manager, Jeanette Buckle. And the view at the resources meeting was that we should consider continuing with the trial at a point in the future when it is appropriate to do so. But the report that was presented should be expanded in the area of finances and potential costs, both capital and revenue, so that going forward we can make a more considered decision at town council level rather than simply at resources. And I think the other thing that of note, which I will mention now, but it will come up again under item 13 on the agenda, is we had a grant request from the Beaconsfield Society. There was a considerable amount of debate about this. However, the overall view was that resources would recommend that this grant application be approved at 100% level, which is unusual. However, I think that is going to come up again on item 13. So I'll leave that for later on.
Thank you, Councillor Park. Right, moving on to finance and audit. To note, draft year-end papers, draft statutory papers. Receive an update from the clerk on the audit process.
Thank you. So the papers are the same papers which were presented very recently at the Resources Committee. They are in draft and they are subject to adjustment. There are still things coming up. Good news that I've had recently is that our preferred auditor, who had said they could not take us on due to the corona and impact of how they're having to work, etc., did contact me again last week and said, do you want the good news or the good news? So they are starting this week. That is marvellous. It's good and bad for me because they will exercise extreme scrutiny and it's going to be painful. But I am aware of this company and their reputation. However, I do think it's what we need, and therefore I'm going to be buried in that for at least the next couple of weeks. So we do have a lot going on currently, but that is a positive move forward for us to do. So as I say, I think the one thing that I had omitted before our resources meeting, which I expect Councillor Basterman will have an opinion on, is during the last year there had been an identification of a capital sum due to a land sale several years ago, really quite a long time ago, that did result in a net gain, and it is my opinion that should be displayed in its own reserve and used for capital purposes. And specific capital projects. We've discussed this in resources and at full council, or not full council. I think we've discussed it in every committee this year about the fact that the reason the reserves appear so high is that you did have this situation, and it is quite a few years ago, and it is quite a large sum of money. And to enable you to spend it, you need to keep it visible. And I had meant to do that adjustment before resources, and unfortunately I didn't. But it is in our general reserve. It's just not there shown as a specific capital reserve. And as I say, I do know that Councillor Basterman has discussed this with me in the past, and advice was taken at the time to say that it wasn't required to be shown as a separate reserve, and I fully respect that advice. I just think that you would find it easier to manage if you had it visible, and then you would be more confident in spending it.
Okay, that's a good point. So are we in agreement that this should be the case? Because if that's the situation, Councillor Basterman, sorry, you're muted. You're muted.
The only thing I think I'd point out is that capital expenditure has taken place since the disposal of that land, and it would have been funded out of that reserve. So to know what's going to be in the reserve today, you would need to make all the adjustments, backdate all the adjustments for that disposal, and any expenditure that's taken place in the interim, because the whole amount is no longer available because some of it has been spent. It has been spent on, I think, repairs, capital related items. So I think you'd have a bit of a backfilling exercise to go through to get the right number.
That's okay. I'll do that. I mean, we did that with the butterfly grant. That was painful. I can assure you, 7 years worth of that. But we can do it, and I think it is worth unwinding to give, as we've sort of revealed some of these things. Whilst we've got some people in the council who have know their way around a balance sheet and a P&L, we have others who don't, and it's my job to make it as accessible to every person, regardless of their skills, as I can, and they'll understand it better if I can show it. But I fully accept that we need to unwind that those transactions, but they should be fairly easy to unwind. And I do find that councillors seem to have incredibly long memories, so I'm sure they'll all be happy to assist me in that process.
I'm sure. So can we be in agreement that that process is carried forward? And
sorry, Alex.
Yes.
I presume we're referring to the sale of the land at Long Meadow, are we? This is where, yeah, I thought it was.
One Tree Meadow, I believe it's called.
One Tree. Sorry, I apologise. One Tree Meadow. Yes, sorry. Yeah.
My old playground.
This was in the days when Councillor Ian Johnson was advising us. He was senior partner of B.B. Collins at the time, and he made a significant point that these monies were available to be used within the community at whatever level. In other words, it wouldn't necessarily be capital, it would necessarily be expenditure. We had a completely free rein. So whilst I understand what you're saying, we should actually have a separate fund designated to determine and show where that's arisen. What I wouldn't be very happy about is the fact that these monies are therefore restricted, which is in fact not the case.
That's even better. I mean,
that's better, yeah, that's flexibility then.
Better, but because what's happened inadvertently, what has happened is because they are in the general reserve and councillors haven't kept that, they don't have that degree of knowledge that you have. You have then moved forward each year, done your budget, and you are then obliged to spend within your budget, and you haven't been aware that you've got this pot of money that you're allowed to spend that's not from budget. So you've kept yourselves very strictly to the rules of what you can spend, and you've still got the pot of money there.
Okay,
So
yeah.
I've answered a query from Councillor Hogan only yesterday, where I think he'd said something about, well, why was this money not the same as that money? And I said, because this was agreed in committee that it would be taken from reserves or whatever. So the ones I've done, I'm aware of since I've been clerk, and I can go and find the minute references and do that. I fully take Philip's point. I will be reliant on some councillor memory as well as some big queries on the database to unwind that. But I think also with the auditor, they will help with that, and we may well put a limit on the amount of each transaction that I'm searching for, so that I'm not looking for 10 quid here or there. But I'll make sure that it's understandable and accessible for everyone.
Any other questions on the town clerk on this matter? Councillor Hogan.
I just wanted to say, Chairman, I did, as the clerk has alluded, ask her a number of questions on the accounts, which she's very kindly answered for me. With her particular knowledge of parish accounts, I think I must, and I think the town council should commend her for making such progress in knocking the town council's accounts into some sort of shape. And I also look to her in the future to continue to educate me on these matters, because local government finance and arrangements it always seems to be something that's incredibly obscure. So I think you should all join me in thanking her for her diligence.
Well, I think, Councillor Hogan, we would all definitely agree with you on that line. Definitely seeing the amount of work that our clerk has been doing over the last few months, actually, all this last year, to be honest. Thank you very much for that. Moving forward, we would like to consider the following documents to recommend for adoption by the council. Standing orders adapted from the NALC model standing orders and recommended by the governance committee. Now, this came to town council meeting last time. Due to the amount of reports and standing orders that needed to be recommended, this was quite a big one, and we decided to put this one back until this meeting. I personally have not a problem with it. I think it seems to be a good model for a standing order, which is necessary for this council. I'd like to hear your comments, please, if you have any. This is the standing order for adapted by NALC for the governance by the governance committee. Lorna, did you want to say anything, Councillor Shaw?
So these standing orders have been reviewed by the governance committee, and they were all in agreement that we should present them to full council for approval. They're based on the standard NALC standing orders. There's a few places where we can fill in the missing blanks, but most of it is not for changing. But I would like to say that if there are any changes that needed, we should review those changes by the governance committee and bring it back to full-time council. But does anybody else have any comments on them?
Councillor Hogan.
I was just going to say is that, as the clerk has demonstrated already, it is possible to adjust, you know, and tweak standing orders as and when the council thinks it's appropriate. Indeed, I think the current standing orders have got several revisions on them, which the town clerk has been able to enact in the short period that she's been with us. So, you know, it's like these aren't for the rest of our lives. You know, these are the current NALC regulations. If we find that there's a difficulty with any part of them which is not mandatory, you know, it's always open to review. And I think that's the whole reason of having a governance committee, is to do exactly that. So I would certainly recommend them. I think it's time that we were dragged screaming into the 21st century, and we're up to date with our standing orders.
Any other questions? Right. Do we need to vote on this, town clerk?
Yes, you do need to vote on it.
So we need a proposer?
The governance committee presented these to you before, and you just needed some more time to go through them. They have adjusted they've answered every query on an item which we are allowed to adjust. Anything in bold in the document is a statutory requirement which you are not allowed to adjust. I'm sorry if any of you have them in black and white, but if you're looking at them on the screen, you will also see that they are colour coded, whether it applies to full council, standing committees, working groups, etc. So there are different levels, and as Patrick said, you know, if we take the NALC model, we know that we are legal, that they hang together, everything works, and they're not with you forever, but they are with you until the next time you adjust them.
Okay, thank you very much. So could I have a raise of hands, those in favour of these being put forward?
Thank you.
My hand is raised but can't be seen.
Okay, thank you, Roy.
Thank you, Roy. Vexatious complaints policy. Town clerk, would you like to say something on this?
Yes, this is an SLCC document, Society of Local Council Clerks copyrighted document. It is very typical within town councils to sometimes receive repeated complaints of the same nature, and it can be very time consuming on staff and resources to deal with such things. As part of a process, we can implement a vexatious complaints policy, or process, which is what I've submitted to you, and that enables me to manage those requests, because otherwise I end up doing repeated freedom of information requests, subject access requests, etc., which just necessarily take up an enormous amount of time. And so it will enable myself and my staff to better manage such requests. So I can't claim to have written the whole thing myself. It is a copyrighted document, but as a member of the SLCC, I'm allowed to bring this forward to you.
Could we have a show of hands that we?
Sorry, there was just one.
Councillor Hogan, sorry.
Question. Yeah, I think it's a sad indictment of our times, well, nationally, that you know, one actually has to have a vexatious complaints policy. But it's in the particular. I mean, there's a sort of a whole page in section 3 which covers all the sorts of examples of vexatious complaints. But actually, in clause 3.1, it actually gives the definition, and the definition there doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, because what it says is Beaconsfield Town Council defines unreasonably persistent vexatious complainants as those complainants who, because of the frequency or nature of their contacts with the council, hinder the council's consideration of their or other people's complaints. It doesn't say hinders the council's, you know, day-to-day business. And so there seems to be that seems to be an incredibly restrictive clause that actually undermines what seems to be the whole point of the council staff's time being wasted, which is what is actually referred to in sections 1.2 and 1.4. So I think that definition 3.1 needs. I mean, I appreciate you've copied this from a standard document, but at 3.1 seems to actually completely undermine the whole purpose of the policy.
I think what I would say is consideration of members of the public or councillors' queries and emails and whatever else is our work, and you can't necessarily decide arbitrarily what is a waste of your time or not when dealing with requests for information. I think the wording of it, that it hinders the treatment of complaints, is okay, because it is the treatment of that as a complaint which causes the huge amount of time. The treatment of such a complaint as a vexatious complaint would be what makes it go down a different path. That's just my interpretation of it, and as I say, it's a copyrighted document, so I would prefer to stick with it as is at the moment and get it implemented. If you want to take it back to the governance committee for future consideration.
No, I certainly believe that it is unfortunately, as I say, it's sad to say, it's something that the town council has to have.
Indeed, it is unfortunate. Could I have a show of hands, please, of those in favour of this being pushed forward? Go forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, number 10 on the agenda, to update on current Beaconsfield Unitary Councillor roles and responsibilities. We have within our town council 6 unitary councillors. Some have migrated from the South Bucks Council and County Council, all very educated and very useful people. And it's really just to hear a bit more information about those roles and how they could also help us here at parish level, because we do tend to get every now and then the odd thing thrown our way that seems a little bit hard at parish level to be able to deal with. I perhaps could ask Patrick if you have any comments on.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't quite follow how you got 6 there, because within the town council there are only 4 councillors who are unitary councillors. That's Councillor Reid, Councillor Basterman, myself, and Councillor Cranmer.
Sorry,
there are other
due to
unitary councillors who are
I apologise.
outside.
Due to the elections, am I not right in thinking that had the elections gone through, we'd had Councillor Pike and Councillor Jackson?
Well, they're not councillors. They would be. But that's nothing to do with the council. That's to do with the Conservative Party, I believe.
I do apologise. Councillor Pike?
Yeah, I think one should include at the present time Councillor Jaquetta Lowen Cooper and also Councillor Damien Sanders, who were rolled over into the unitary by virtue of being part of the old structure, which had 5 district councillors. And of course, you add Anita Cranmer as the former county councillor, and that's 6 comes from. I was listening to Councillor Hogan at the beginning when he mentioned 10, and I cannot for the life of me think that there are 10, but I can accept 6.
But shall I explain that to you? Because clearly it's like at town level there were wards, and then at district level there were different wards, and at county level, and the unitary at the moment is based on the county electoral divisions. The Beaconsfield parish falls into 2 electoral divisions. As I think I mentioned at the beginning, is Wilton Park, and half of the Old Town is in the Gerrards Cross electoral division. So that all of those Gerrards Cross councillors, and I think that's there's Councillor Gibbs, Councillor Smith, Councillor Reid. There is as many of them as there are ones for the Beaconsfield division. So that's how it comes to 10. I think I said about 10 because I've never actually counted it. There may be as many as 12. And that's why I mentioned the fact is that they are people who would normally be invited, as indeed, for example, when Anita was county councillor, there was Barbara Gibbs was the county councillor for the Gerrards Cross division, and she covered Wilton Park and most of the Old Town south of the A40, and she used to come to our meetings. You may remember that.
Councillor Pike.
Yeah, I would just simply say that if we were going to move on 6, I would add Councillor Gibbs, because certainly part of Lakes Lane, I think, was included within the old county structure, and that was where the anomaly came. But I mean, I think if we were to go back to the earlier point and invite those 3 people to a future town council meeting, that would probably be about right.
Okay, excellent.
Sorry, could I just go? It is more than just Lakes Lane. I mean, for example, the Hall Barn Estate is actually in that subdivision, and in fact, a substantial part of the Old Town is in that subdivision. Burnham Avenue, I think, is, for example, in that division. So it isn't just Lakes Lane. So. Yeah,
I think what I'm saying is Lakes Lane was the actual boundary. Once you crossed the other side of Lakes Lane, then you became part of what we would call Beaconsfield Old Town.
Okay,
well,
thank
no,
you. As a matter of reference, I think we could go on quite a long time about this. It is interesting to hear, and I am interested, but I think we could save that to perhaps a discussion outside of this town council meeting, but it is relevant, I do understand.
Sorry. Yeah, so you were
Hogan.
asking something about what was the question? It was to update on current Beaconsfield
unitary council
roles and responsibilities.
Correct.
Well, as I say, I couldn't tell you what they are because there's about 10 of them as to what their various roles and responsibilities are, because they will be on different committees and different bodies and on select committees and so on. And I don't know what ones to do. I mean, Councillor Basterman will know which committees and so on he's on. Councillor Reid would know what he's on and so on. I could comment on the cabinet in that, obviously Anita is the cabinet member for education and skills. Is that? I think that's the full title, isn't it, Anita?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, education and skills, which is obviously a hugely important portfolio at the moment. I've for my sins have got what's called culture, which covers arts and culture and heritage and listed buildings, amongst other things. There are some interesting things happening in culture, and those will be coming up hopefully at the community board. But I think probably people are more interested in probably item 11, which is a report from Buckinghamshire Council, and I would hazard a guess that the hot topic on that would be the reopening of schools. And in that respect, I would defer to my colleague, Councillor Cranmer, who is obviously right up to the
Thank you.
minute.
Councillor Pike, question.
I think that the point here is that we are in our day-to-day dealings with the public constantly asked about matters that are outside the remit of the parish council. And as a consequence, if there is a particular issue that a resident wants to know more about or pursue, we would be in a much better position if we were actually able to say, well, okay, here is a unitary councillor whose name is Patrick Hogan, who is responsible for A, B, C, and D, and we can then start a dialogue with that unitary councillor in order to find more information to satisfy the query of the resident. Now, can I just finish, Patrick? What I'm finding at the moment is that if I look on the unitary website, it is incredibly difficult to actually get in one place a roadmap with regard to where you should go if you're looking for this information. And what I'm asking for is some guidance as to where we look for this information.
Thank you. Councillor Cranmer.
Can I just say, as a councillor, I get contacted by lots and lots of people. I've been out meeting lots of people who've got issues. As a councillor, it's not, you know, I mean, because our names are out there. People can email us, phone us, you know, whatever. So you know, I'm mystified that that everybody goes to the town council. In fact, you know, I've had calls from people in Burnham and all over the place, you know, because they can't get hold of their councillors, but they can get hold of me. So I don't understand, you know, what this problem is. I know, for example, I was meeting some residents the other day where what had happened is somebody who knew one of the town councillors had spoken to the town councillor. The town councillor had referred them to Alexa, and I'm not sure whether it was Alexa or someone else at the town council had given them my name, and matters sorted. But they could have contacted me as a town councillor, they could have contacted me as a district councillor or a unitary councillor now. You know, I really don't understand what the problem is.
I think it's a communication issue, because I do know that we do get a lot of questions, but it's knowing where, I mean, the fact that you're prepared to take a lot of these questions on board, Councillor Hogan, is excellent. I mean, they come through, they've got to be culture and heritage. I understand you have a particular field, but the clerk does receive a lot of, they come to the table at parish level, and we're sort of stuck, for want of a better word. And knowing that you're open to those questions is great. Councillor Cranmer.
Well, exactly so. I think that any of your unitary councillors can answer any of your questions, and if they can't answer any of your questions, they know who to go to. And that's really what you're saying, isn't it? You know, you get a question about roads, you get a question about trees, all sorts of things. Where do you go for your answers? And your unitary councillor, any one of us, doesn't matter if they've got a portfolio or not, is the route to finding out who does what. And that is the quick way in, because in the town council, obviously, it's quite a small remit, really, very small and local. So you do need to have that extra information. So I think you just ask anyone. And if they can't help you, they'll find someone who can. They have to.
I'd just like to add is, obviously, the unitary council, because it covers everything that the county used to do and everything that the districts used to do, it is a big place with a lot of people. It's still going through reorganisation. I think each department is going through a restructuring. There is a timetable that goes through well into next year. I think, for example, the people I deal with are actually technically not restructured until April 2021. So it is a bit of a movable feast, and even, you know, Anita and I would not be able to instantly tell you who is dealing with something. But of course, we have to pick up the telephone or email or speak to people face to face and ask the question. But that is part and parcel of the role, as far as I can see.
Okay, Councillor Pike first, please.
Is it possible to actually define as far as the unitary councillors in this area are concerned, which committees they actually sit on.
Yes.
Councillor Cranmer.
Where would we find that?
Absolutely. Well, it's a bit buried actually, because I did look up before we started to see who's on what committee, and it's not easily available, but I know we've got it available to us councillors. If you want that, we'll supply it. You should
Yeah.
know.
Thank you. Yes, please. That'd be very
I was
useful.
going to say is if you go onto the website, you can go on to your councillor. You can pick out, you could pick out, for example, myself. You could click on me, and it will tell you exactly, have all my contact details, and it'll tell you exactly what committees or whatever I'm on, and it would be the same for Philip or anybody else. It's there in black and white.
It is buried. It has to be buried.
Well, no, it isn't. You go on the website. If you put councillor in the search engine, it will take you to the page with all the councillors.
Patrick, I did it today. Okay. And I know it's not easy.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Well, it's great to know that we've got our unitaries here to support us, and we now know that we can do this. I mean, we've always known we can do it, but it's always been a little bit difficult to know where to go.
Sorry to butt in, but what you should know, and I think we're very, very bad at telling the public this. Most unitary councillors, and I'm talking personally, have about 40 emails a day, many of them from residents on a variety of issues: flooding on Penn Road, potholes here, schools there, social care, all of that. And we just tend to get on with it and do it, and you know nothing about it, and the residents know nothing about it. But that's sort of how it all gets done. And I think probably we should be very much better in saying, this is what we're doing, and this is how we're doing it, and this is who's on what committee. And I think Councillor Pike is right. That's what we should be doing, making it all much more public, because maybe they think we do nothing, which is not true.
No, we know that. Thank you, Councillor Cranmer. Okay, thank you very much. A report from Buckinghamshire Council on that line. Anita, would you like to?
Well, I think we've possibly had quite a bit. I thought you might be interested to know, though, the cost to the council, unitary council, of the COVID activities, because I think that the impression has been, I've heard, that actually the council made money because they didn't have to operate a lot of things, and they made money, and it's far from the truth. Actually, the cost of the council has been 13 million of providing COVID services, and that is cost to us, which we will have to pay. Further than that, we have had nearly 400 million from the government given to us, some of which we're going to have to ask for back. And that has been for grants to small businesses, which we had to administer, loans, and various recreation centres and various other things. And at the moment, one of the chief jobs of the Unitary Council is recovery. There's a recovery board, is economic growth, is town regeneration, and that is going to be great for Beaconsfield, we hope. Build up our towns, get our businesses going again, and get everything moving, because it's cost us very dearly, and it's cost you, me, taxpayers, a lot of money to deal with what we've dealt with. And generally speaking, it's been dealt with very well. We're not through yet, though.
No,
that's where we are today.
Thank you, Councillor Cranmer. I'm sure it's a long journey ahead, unfortunately, and I think we'll be obviously having to recover this over a long period of time.
Yeah, I think so.
Thank you. Any other reports from that line? Right, moving on to number 12. We wanted an update from councillors on discussions regarding the A355 Relief Road. Somewhat unfortunately, having been named by one of our councillors as, excuse me if I pronounce this wrong, but Bolbarrow Way, which relates to an old burial ground which is outside the golf course, which is an amazing bit of historical history, but has been being rebranded around town as the Road to Nowhere, which is very unfortunate. Councillor Cranmer.
Well, other councils have been involved in this. Councillor Langwell, we had a meeting with our local MP to discuss ways forward and what we do about getting that relief road open, because it's clearly obvious that it has to happen sooner than the dates that we have been given by the developer, which is 2024, 2025, and we are already looking at HS2 traffic predictions at, well, we hear at 400 movements a day, 200 each side at the peak, and we are facing a lights, and we are facing a zebra crossing. So we're facing an awful lot of difficulty on the A355 because we haven't got the relief road. And I'll tell you what's happened recently, which may or may not happen. I have actually called in the whole application on reserved matters that Inland Homes have put forward for their new, it's not new, but it's revised planning application for 156 houses and many, many other aspects. And I've called it in really in conjunction with the Beaconsfield Society, Alison, because she is very knowledgeable on this and I value her knowledge. We have spoken with Joy Morrissey and she has spoken with Inland Homes themselves. She's spoken with HS2 and sought for different solutions as to how we get the relief road completed. Now, and so it came to the point where I decided that I would call it in. Now I'm not calling, and the call-in's been accepted, I think. I'm not calling in the plan for 156 houses or the football pitch or anything. What I'm calling in is the whole thing to mirror the absolutely disastrous effect it's going to have on the community. Unfortunately, we don't have a planning name to say that the whole community is going to be completely thrown into disarray if this planning application goes ahead as is and the relief road is not completed. The relief road will be used only for construction work within the Wilton Park site and not for the benefit of the Beaconsfield residents. And I think we owe it to the Beaconsfield residents to get ourselves out there and get that relief road by whatever means we can completed. Now, the county council have been approached and they will not fund the total cost of that road, and no more should they. HS2 have been approached and they are not willing to fund the road, even though in the 214 application it was stated that it would be for the benefit of HS2 traffic, but that could be a moot point. It's going to be a difficult point to argue, but my view, and the view of Councillor and I as well, and Councillor Pike as well, is it's an untenable planning application because it throws into disarray the whole town of Beaconsfield, and we will suffer for this. Our residents will suffer for this disastrously. So it's really a pincer movement, actually, to be frank, to try and open up vision to see that we have to have that relief road completed, and we're putting some pressure where pressure should be put. So that's where we are on that. Others may want to add to that.
Thank you, Councillor Cramner. That's good news, if I can be honest, from having sort of our hands felt like they're tied and yet again being sort of pushed into submission for these developments. It's nice that it's good that that something's moving forward on it, and any support that we can give as a parish to help push this as councillors, we will.
Or we probably should, as a town council, be making some sort of supportive statements. If this is an action that you would endorse and you think is a good action, and Councillor and I would have a view on that, I think.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I think that'd be a good idea. Councillor Jackson, you're on mute. Oh, no, you're not.
Yes, thank you, Anita. I think it's a good initiative that you called it in, and I think the town deserves to understand and know what happened with the relief road, why it's not built, but also more crucially, that any development that any future development that Inland Home wants to do, they really, we really look hard into its impact on the town, because it does look from where I'm sitting, that previous considerations by the previous council, the council has failed to take into consideration the impact of it on our town. I would strongly welcome and encourage, my colleagues and I to support a motion or some sort of letter to our local MP and to Inland Homes and also to Bucks Council to highlight the fact that, without the relief road, this town is going to suffer. It's already suffering, but it's going to suffer even more under the HS2 works. So I hope the council can come together and on a united front to write to stakeholders, just to let them know, because we are the voice of the town, and I can tell you from what I'm hearing and what my neighbours are telling me, the town is very upset and concerned.
Councillor Jackson, Jackson, just a point. There's quite an echo on your phone for whatever reason, or whichever way you're talking to us.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Councillor Hogan.
Yeah, I would like to endorse what's being said. Is everybody would like to see that road completed. It's a tragedy, really, back in, and I'm not sure I can get my years right. I guess it was 2018 when Councillor Cranmer and Mark Shaw, who was the deputy leader of the county council, stood and cut the sod in their high-vis jackets and their hats, genuinely believing that that road was going to be completed.
Yeah.
And we've had the planning application. We certainly some councillors on the planning committee objected to the fact that there was no obligation to complete the relief road. And the worst thing is, we all know that if that road was completed, it would alleviate so many problems in the town. As it is, it's a terrible situation. So I'm absolutely agree with Councillor Cranmer. It is anything that can be done, and certainly calling in the planning application is if Inland Homes can be encouraged to do something, that's fantastic.
Is there something we should put together, almost as Jackson's mentioned about writing a letter to the right place, but Councillor Cranmer, that we can do, maybe form a subcommittee to deal with this, because the danger is we all know what we want best for Beaconsfield, and this is essential that this is sorted, that we move forward on it.
Well, I think we have to show our residents that we are aware of what this is doing to the town.
Absolutely, and I think this meeting tonight will show that, because it is live on YouTube.
And then I think perhaps, I mean, we can put out a statement, but we could ask for a meeting with the chairman, Steve Wicks, who is himself a Beaconsfield resident. I mean, the MP has met with him, but we are the town council. We could also, because they have to know they do know the knock-on effect of all of this. And it's more than even the residents. It's young people who are going to use a football field that they are not going to be able to park their cars on, because there's going to be so much construction traffic up there that they can't let them park their cars up there, their parents, and things like that. And this is going to seriously affect all of us. So I think as a town council, we've just got to get behind the view that we look after our residents and we stand for them.
I think a meeting with the chairman of Inland Homes, Steve Wicks, is a good idea, or the owner. I think that would be something we could put forward, and I think we should sooner than later. And then, of course, the thought, I mean, something obviously devastatingly went wrong at county and Bucks level for this to be put through. I have no idea what happened, but obviously something was misaligned on a contract somewhere that they've been able to get through this. Unless I'm reading this incorrectly, I do not know the facts and what actually happened, but I do feel that there has to be accountability and help from Unitary to try and help us resolve this at our parish level. We've got the scar on the landscape in Greenbelt, they haven't. Councillor Jackson.
Yes, no, I completely agree that a meeting should be held, and I recall a few weeks ago various residents and community groups to reach out and ask whether we could hold a public meeting. I'm not sure, you know, how logistically or what needs to be done for a public meeting to be held, but I certainly feel that getting Inland Homes into a room with us and residents, and also a representative from the unitary, would be helpful and even someone from the MP's office in trying to untangle, the situation we have, which is a road to nowhere, and it doesn't look like it's going to be fixed or built for the next few years.
Good, thank you. Any other comments on this? Okay, thank you for that. We'll move on to the grant application. Consider and approve a grant application that came to resources at the last meeting for some funding for some stickers. I think the grant originally was for around £450 and has now been reduced. I believe we need to put it to the town council meeting to approve it. It is normally the process that we would allow for 50% of the grant. In this instance, we took the vote that we wanted to support the Beaconsfield Society with what they were using it for, to help businesses, stickers to go on businesses, shop windows, etc., to help improve and try and kickstart this economy back together again as best we can. Now, in the grant application, it says that it is unlikely that 100% of the grant would be offered, but in this instance, we took the vote that we would grant 100%. So I'd like to put it to council that we can vote this through. Are there any questions on this? Councillor Hogan.
Yeah, just one question. If I remember it, it's for 250 stickers, and I'm just wondering, and somebody may know the answer to this: do we actually have 250 premises on the high street that these stickers can go on? I mean, if every business wants to participate in buying Beaconsfield, are there 250 premises, or will some of these stickers be able to be used for other promotion?
Councillor Hogan, I think I understand your question, but I think in this instance, as you know, when you go to print 10 stickers or 15 stickers, can cost you £50. To print 250 can cost you £60. It's probably more to do with that.
I think the clerk had her hand up. So I think
sorry, she did. I was going to butt in first. Clark, over to you.
One, I was going to say that they are probably in batches, but also it's a block order, so it has to you order them. That's probably the minimum quantity. And my understanding is that they are these vinyl window stickers. I'm not entirely sure the size of it. I should know that off the document. But I think that they can go into cars, or they can go into other things, not shop windows. So it's not limited. It's an initiative. They'll give everything they can.
Well, I was just thinking is that if there's enough stickers, I mean, for example, town councillors might want to display them on their cars and encourage people to participate.
Absolutely. Any other questions on this? No. So can we have a show of hands that we approve this? Thank you. Yes, right. Moving on to the neighbourhood plan, to consider the officer report on this matter and the recommendations contained to agree terms and reference for NPSG. Now, we have agreed to this plan in previous meetings, and to carry out a plan. It is an essential part of saving this historic town. It is a huge endeavour. It's a massive project to take on board, of which we need support from many, from individuals and from organisations. So I would like to ask questions about this neighbourhood plan. There are Jeanette has carried out with due diligence, as recommended by councils, looking into the moving forwards on this, and has put together a list of recommendations which were sent out to you by the clerk. Jeanette, is there anything you'd like to add to this?
No, I mean, you should have the report, and hopefully you all read that beforehand, and the terms of reference for the steering group. So maybe if you've got any questions that you want to ask about that.
I have one. You chose to, I think you recommended O'Neill Horner as the NP planning consultants over the other three. What was your choice? What was your reasoning for that?
They were the most recommended by other councils that had undertaken a neighbourhood plan, and they have done, I think, the most in Buckinghamshire and probably the most full stop. So they have a good track record and a local knowledge of neighbourhood plans in Buckinghamshire.
Excellent, thank you. When I don't know if many of you came to the Beaconsfield Society, they showed a webinar of which DLP were the organisation that put themselves forward at that point. And they seem pretty proficient as well, but I take your report on that, Jeanette. Councillor Pike.
Yeah, I think we talked a little while ago about having our own kind of workshop for perhaps half a day or so to be presented by an external consultant that would give us more of a flavour about what to expect as part of the process, and to give us sort of a steer on how we should proceed. Now, I know that Councillor Hogan has recently commented that there is a significant potential spend here, and that, you know, we need to be pretty clear about who we're going to get into bed with before we actually sign any contract that's involving a lot of money. So I think that, you know, I'd like to see that workshop take place. Whether or not that gives us more confidence with the person chosen to deliver the workshop is another matter. I mean, I think we've got a slight dilemma here, because O'Neill Homer may well be you know, widely recommended within Buckinghamshire, but I think DLP are, you know, probably not a bad organisation. So I'm not quite sure how we manage this, but I think we need to take a closer look at who the potential partner may be before we actually sign on the dotted line.
Town Clerk.
I just wanted to say that originally we were hoping to ask the planning consultant that we've worked with on the local plan to deliver that sort of workshop, and unfortunately she hasn't been available to do that because and wasn't able to tender for our process, so kind of self-ruled out, and that's why we didn't move ahead with that. But perhaps is, you know, maybe you can audition them, but we could. That might be something that we could arrange some Zooms, Jeanette, to.
Yeah, obviously, if you would like to have an O'Neill Homer do a Zoom with relevant people, just so that you get a feel for their capabilities, like I obviously have done, but then that would give you comfort. Why not? Why not?
Councillor Hogan.
I was just going to say, I agree absolutely with what Councillor Pike was saying. And indeed, that was actually minuted in the last town council meeting on the 11th of June, the fact of tendering for the consultants. But before we actually got into a position where we could, if you like, have a beauty parade of consultants, we do need to have that, what did seminar, whatever Alistair called it, you know, so we actually have a better understanding of what's involved. And it's possible that without, you know, getting into bed with O'Neill Homer, or whatever they're called, is that O'Neill Homer could actually facilitate that sort of thing, so that we have a better idea of what we would be looking for in the consultants that we would hope to take it forward. You know, there's no obligation if they can facilitate that workshop, so that the town council has a better understanding of what's involved, and also they would probably have a good idea of, you know, the implications at the moment, because there are, you know, as everybody's probably aware, there's these changes to planning at national level, which I believe are sort of further on the agenda tonight, which are really, you know, have major ramifications. So you know, I think that what I can't remember what Alistair called it, but it was like an away day with a planning consultant to sort of bring us up to speed on what's involved and the potential costs and so on.
Thank you. Jeanette,
I mean, I believe Alexa some weeks ago sent an email to all councillors if they wanted to listen in on a webinar about neighbourhood planning, I believe. And so you might have all had that opportunity in the past. But yes, I think it's a good idea, and it will obviously give you all comfort. And I'm sure O'Neill would agree to holding a you know, one-to-one with, not one-to-one, but
one-to-many
themselves with whoever on wants to listen in and ask questions and find out about how they would approach a neighbourhood plan and what's involved, and any questions, including the new planning regime that's coming out.
Thank you, Jeanette. Councillor Cranmer.
Yes, just one thing, which I did mention to Jeanette earlier. As I understand, we can't hang about on this, and it's a great idea that we're doing exactly this, because as I understand it, December is the cut-off date for the call for sites. I believe that is so. I heard that in a planning presentation by the portfolio holder. We need to check on it, but if that is the case, if the call for sites ends in December, we've got to have some idea of what sites around us, brownfield, not underdeveloped, over whatever, that we are going to put forward. We are going to have more houses, so we need to get our sites identified. We've got to get cracking on this. So it's a great idea. We need to do it tomorrow.
Can I suggest, are there any hands up? Sorry, Councillor Jackson.
Can I just echo what Councillor Cranmer has said? It's my understanding as well that we need to get as soon as possible. We don't want the opportunity to submit our preferences or our views or sites, and I really think we should get cracking, subject obviously to due diligence and, you know, contracts being signed with the relevant parties, but we need to get cracking.
Okay, good. So could we perhaps suggest that, Jeanette, could you organise a Zoom meeting with O'Neill's at the nearest possible time that fits with those that can attend it? And then we will have a conversation with them with questions and answer session and find out what we need to do moving forward. There were recommendations from Jeanette on her report. Would you like to, I'm sure you've read them, but would we like to agree to any of those tonight? Obviously we can't delegate O'Neill's because we have yet to speak to them. Councillor Pike.
Well, I think as far as council representation is concerned, we could move forward slightly there, because I think the comment was written somewhere in the last few days that unitary councillors would not be part of that for obvious reasons. I know that we talked recently about 4 councillors. One was yourself, one was Lorna, another was Graham, and the other was Jackson, who I think potentially is excluded now by virtue of the unitary involvement, potentially. So maybe of the 3 remaining, that we should actually decide on 2. And I don't know, Graham, would you have a view on whether or not you'd like to sit this one out?
Yes, as you know, I have some personal issues at the minute in terms of going forward to October. But beyond that, yes, you know, I'm more than happy to get involved. Yes.
Right. Okay.
Thank you, Graham. Councillor Hogan.
As everybody, I hope, appreciates, I am supportive of a neighbourhood plan. Jeanette and I worked on the Creating Better Beaconsfield report, which indeed recommended a neighbourhood plan. For whatever reason, it's taken us 5 years to get to this point. I think one of the important things about this seminar or way day or whatever that Alistair has suggested is the fact that there are considerations in the legislation around it, which actually gives an indication of who should be enrolled and how they should be involved. And I think one needs to be very careful not to just start to deciding who can and can't be involved. I mean, I personally don't particularly wish to be involved because, you know, conflict of interest and all that sort of thing. But I think you need to be careful not to be prescriptive as to who can be involved, because if you do, you may well actually produce an illegal plan that could not ever be adopted. So I think you need to take advice from the consultants.
If I may just stay on that, Councillor Hogan, your knowledge on the neighbourhood plan is deep and has a lot of information. As much as you don't want to, you cannot perhaps be involved in planning it, would you be able to cast your eye over the plan as it progresses? Because you are one very good at picking out where issues aren't perhaps quite correct, if I may say.
Well, I'm happy to contribute as I can, but I personally wouldn't want to be involved if others felt that it was actually not in the best interests of the town's neighbourhood plan.
Okay.
But I'm happy to do what I can. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson.
Hello, thank you. Councillor Pike mentioned that I have shown interest in being part of the neighbourhood plan, but does not know whether, given my interest in the Unitary Council, would be keen to serve. I would be keen to be part of any discussions and working on a possible neighbourhood plan until such time there is a conflict of interest.
Okay, thank you. That's noted. Any other comments at this point? Yes, Town Clerk.
Could I just say that with things like the terms of reference for the steering group, if we could adopt some terms of reference, they haven't been picked out of a hat. Jeanette hasn't just made things up. I haven't just made things up. We have spoken to some of these consultants. We are experienced project managers. We know the type of and size of teams which work effectively. No one will be excluded. There will be a wider neighbourhood forum, which is mentioned in Jeanette's report, to engage with key stakeholders, which I know that Councillor Reid had sent several emails about earlier in the week, even though he's not able to be here. What I'm saying is we're not just throwing this stuff together. If we can get some of these things agreed, even if we don't select the consultant, but if we can agree that we will form a steering group and that we will, that the terms of reference can be adopted and some of the other things on the list contained in the report, it will really help us move on, because by getting that admin in place, Jeanette can be working towards this, so that by the time we get to our next meeting, we've actually got some things done and we're not still floundering at the beginning.
Thank you. Councillor Hogan?
Yeah, I don't see, a bit like the standing orders, I don't see anything wrong with having those terms of reference as a starting point. But I think it would be it will be a movable feast, because I think you will have to consider them as the thing develops and as and when you actually take proper advice, because you might find that you do need to broaden the scope. I think I mentioned the fact that the experience on the town plan thing was that there was a huge meeting in the town hall, that the town, the room probably had, I don't know, 60, 70 people in it. They were asked for expressions of interest. I think 26 people said they wanted to be involved, and that 26 quickly whittled itself down to, I think, 10. And actually, then there were further people. There were 2 other people, Jeanette included, who were actually recruited along the way to get the final 12. But there were over 60 people also contributing. And I suspect the neighbourhood plan would have some sort of similar dynamic to that. But I think you need to be careful not to exclude that initial, whatever it is, 60 or 100 people, by saying, oh, well, we're only going to have 12 people and these are who we're going to have. I think you could be endangered there. The other thing was the Penn Parish is, Penn Parish have indicated that they're not interested, because of, obviously there's a number of considerations for Penn Parish as itself. But obviously there may be people in Knotty Green and areas of who consider themselves as Beaconsfield residents who might actually want to participate in the exercise, and indeed they are people you might very well want to consult with, because they do have a vested interest. I mean, a lot of people, Beaconsfield is their address, even if they are actually not in the parish. So you've got to be fair to the whole community, and the community isn't just defined by the boundary, although for the practical purposes that the designated area would be the boundary from what I see from Jeanette's report.
you. Thank you for that, Councillor Hogan. So, shall we put a vote towards the recommendation? Town Clerk, could you express again what that was? And this was for
Let me just get the document in front of me.
Shall I do it?
Have you got it in front of
yes,
you?
please, Jeanette.
Okay. Take it one by one, and you can ask for a show of hands each time, Alex.
To agree to form a neighbourhood plan steering group. Can all those in favour to show of hands?
I think this is important to move it forward.
And me.
That's unanimous. To agree an additional budget of 15k beyond the 18k grants if needed. Show of hands, please.
Yes from me.
So that's all with the exception of Patrick.
Yeah, I'm just abstaining on that one.
It's abstaining. Sorry, I just said that because it's quicker. To agree the area of the neighbourhood plan is the back parish boundary of Beaconsfield. All show of hands in support. Even though we will obviously talk to our neighbours that are in Knotty Green.
Absolutely.
I'm just abstaining on that as well. Just for clarity.
Thank you. I should be asking for abstentions actually. So.
And
we don't need to ask for abstentions if there is a clear resolution.
Thank you, Town Clerk.
There have not been any requests for recorded votes.
Okay. And to agree council representatives to work with the project officer in delivering the plan. And at the moment, I'm hearing Jackson and Graham. Everyone agree? Show of hands.
Yeah.
I'm not showing hands. I'm disagreeing. I thought it was. Okay. I thought it was not Graham and not Jackson.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Because I'm happy to
and
work
I thought
with the.
It was probably Lorna and Alex.
Yeah.
I thought. Okay.
Lorna and Alex were two of the four.
And yourself.
Interested, and I think Graham and Jackson obviously are going to be involved.
Okay.
Sorry, Councillor Saunders, you're muted.
Can I say that if you want a third member, I would be very happy to join the group. I leave it entirely up to the council to decide whether they feel a third member is required.
Okay.
I think
well,
so, Andrew.
So in terms of me setting up the, I want to call it fashion parade with O'Neill, but I can't think of another word that springs to mind.
Workshop.
Workshop. Do these people just mentioned, Graham, Jackson, Lorna, Alex, Andy, want to be included that, or does it want to be extended beyond that?
Everyone.
Everyone.
Absolutely.
Okay, fine.
And
with regards to the terms of reference, do you all agree that to accept those terms of reference, bearing in mind that as it evolves, it's a draft, that steering group can amend as it need be?
Can I have a show of hands for that, please?
Yep.
Councillor Hogan.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to endorse what Councillor Saunders was saying. Is I think Sandy's breadth of knowledge of the town and that would be invaluable.
Absolutely.
So, you know, I certainly think he should be in there as one of the 3 or 4 or whatever it is you decide to have.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. You got your work cut out, Jeanette.
Yes, so I can crack on, as I like to say.
Right, number 15, Christmas market and the light switch on event, which we've run now. This would have been the 3rd year, I believe. It's quite a popular event that's been running in the Old Town, which is the traditional switch on event for the Christmas lights. My view is having been involved with it, that I think it would be not the right move to have a public switch on this year due to the pandemic of COVID-19. It is a great shame because it is a very big community event, but looking at how all those other events have suffered over this year and still are suffering, not being able to run their events, it would be nothing but, apart from probably foolhardy and the incorrect move, it would be churlish to run it. I would, moving on from that, we will switch on the lights. There will be lights, Christmas lights in Beaconsfield. I think they're a great joy to many of the local residents, but I would like to suggest that perhaps we try and do a virtual switch on, as computer technology has allowed this to happen in other departments. I'm open to discussion on this. We don't have to spend a long time on it, just to hear your view on that. It would be a matter of it probably involving, there is a budget set aside for the Christmas switch on. Obviously, it would be nowhere near what that budget is, but we could employ a pretty good IT company who could set something up for us where we could actually maybe get a famous person to switch it on from somewhere quite interesting. I don't know, it's open to debate or discussion, but I thought there could be quite something to be involved with. Councillor Shaw, did you want to say something?
Yeah, well, let's get the residents involved. Perhaps you could do some competitions with some school children.
Absolutely.
Locals to press the button or press several buttons.
Or we could all press a button at the same time, have a countdown from 10.
Yeah.
So everybody has a part share in it. So we could have cameras set up, obviously, in the old town, the new town, live streaming. That's not complicated with modern technology. Perhaps we could have we could have a Santa's grotto. We could have Santa live from Lapland. I could ask him if he'd be prepared to do that. And then he could be taking comments from younger members of the public. But as I said, if you're in agreement to that, perhaps we could put a little happy project together leading up towards Christmas.
Jeanette can do that in her spare time.
Yeah, I was just about to say, who's voting to run that committee?
A minor detail, Jeanette, a minor detail. But generally, I think we're in agreement that if we can make this work, it would be something positive for all of us. So the community of Beaconsfield. Good.
Great.
Any other comments on that? Town Clerk.
If you're done on that, I just wanted to bring your attention that Councillor Shaw was having some technical issues earlier, but she did want to make a comment on the Relief Road discussion just before you move on to other things.
Councillor Shaw.
Yeah, apologies. I'm not sure I got frozen. The Relief Road, we did talk, we mentioned what else we could do. And as we're doing with the stickers for the shops, should we be doing a similar thing? Stickers, should the town council be supporting the printing of posters and other stickers? The reason why those shop stickers could be worthless if we can't get locals to travel into town because of Relief Road problems. So I think the issues goes hand in hand. We want people to shop local, but if we've got this Relief Road issue, we're scaring people away from coming into town. So perhaps at the same time we can raise our concerns with the local people. It was a question, can we also print posters and stickers for the Relief Road?
It's an interesting point, Lorna. I think what I'd like personally is to see what comes back from the reports over the next few weeks or days, because obviously we're now going to move forward, and with the help of our unitary councillors and obviously us as well, deciding what our plan should be, perhaps moving forward on this. It might be that it has to get to a point where we have to object physically in the sense of stickers, and perhaps, you know, let's get this meeting underway with Steve Wicks if we can, see what he's got to say. I mean, it might be they just push us into the corner, in which case I think that could be a point to be taken on board. That's my view. I don't know what the other councillors feel about this. Councillor Cranmer.
Well, I would agree with you. I think it's a good idea, Lorna, if you're in a desperate state. we are desperate, but when we haven't explored all avenues, and I think if we explore diplomacy before we go into battleground is a good way to do it.
Well, okay, it's just to raise awareness, and
I think it's a good idea, you know, and certainly we'd get everybody on board with, you know, having stickers in their cars, and everybody would, they definitely, but we probably should give it a few weeks and see if anything comes of the things that we don't all know everything about. We don't know what the MP is actually doing with HS2, or, you know, we have to be a little bit careful, I think. You know, we've asked her to intervene, and she has begun to do that. And then the planning application, you know, that may produce something we don't know.
Thank you, Lauren.
Okay.
We move on to item 16 on the agenda. This is a government consultation on planning for the future. This is brought to us by Councillor John Reid, who unfortunately is not with us today. It's a new direction from government. We have until October to respond to it, and I, as of yet, have not been able to read it all. But I would suggest that perhaps it might be worth putting a working group together so that we can work out what our plan should be on this. This is the new government directive. So I don't know if you've had a chance to read it, Graham.
I'm afraid I haven't.
No, I understand. I understand.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think it'd be good if we could, you know, perhaps over the next week or so, some of us could. I mean, I'm happy to be a part of this. Certainly, I know that I've heard that some Bucks organisations have objected to it, to the government decision. And I think it's along the lines of allowing more planning to be pretty much pushed through for developments. So could I have sorry, Councillor Jackson.
No, I just want to say and echo. I think we share very similar views. That I'm concerned about this government consultation and what I've been reading in the newspapers and in papers, which purport that more the government is going to encourage more building, which isn't a bad thing. But ultimately, they're going to try to strip away local council and residents' views on this or input in this. And I think this is very concerning, particularly in a town like ours, which is so desirable to live in. But again, also, inundated with developers eyeing up pieces of land left, right, and centre. One example I understand is, for example, brownfield sites. Planning permission is deemed to have been given if they fulfil certain requirements. My concern is there's nothing for existing developers to to wait for a new consultation, for the new planning laws to come in place, and then go down that route, as opposed to sticking with previous planning permission that they've obtained. So I think it's vital that we put together a group and address some of our concerns robustly. And I volunteer.
No, I take that on board. Councillor Bassman.
Yeah, I think it probably needs to come from a committee rather than a working group. So I would suggest that this should go to the next planning committee. I can see on the website there's one in October, but I'm not sure whether the website's correct. There's one on the 1st of October. That could potentially be a time to discuss it. And then at least you've got the formality of the planning committee submitting a response rather than a working group.
Okay.
And we could invite all councillors to the planning committee. I would suggest.
Good. That's a good idea. Town Clerk?
I'm just very concerned about the email in which Councillor Reid brought this to everyone's attention, and he was concerned that some councillors felt excluded from these type of issues. So I think you might be better to invite members to work on this rather than giving it to a specifically already constituted group, because we would not like any councillor to feel excluded from such consultation.
So your view is to create a working group?
I think it's a specific consultation. It has to be done by October. I haven't had any complaints of people feeling excluded. I would be more than happy for it to go to planning, but if people are feeling excluded from such things, then perhaps
Well, I can put that to our councillors. I mean, obviously those that aren't here will have to be approached, but would there be an objection to it going to a planning committee where it can be?
Sorry, Chairman.
Councillor Hogan.
Councillor Basterman addressed this point just now. He said there's no reason why all councillors can't be invited to the planning committee. It's merely a matter of getting it on the calendar. I mean, it is on the calendar, so that's the next meeting it goes to, and everybody goes to the planning committee. And those people who don't normally go to the planning committee be reminded that they should go to the planning committee. I mean, it's not rocket science.
So,
Could I say it does affect all councils, I think, to have a say here.
So I think moving forward, we need to do something, whether it's planning or working. I think putting it towards the planning committee makes sense to me, because then it will be addressed from the planning committee. And I would ensure, as the chairman, that members of the council come and join us at the planning committee. Okay, so we'll approach that one as it comes forward. But in the meantime, there's a bit of reading to be done. Is that okay? Any other comments on that? No? Good. Right. Have we reached the end, Town Clerk?
I believe we have, and it is, time to, Councillor Inland, to receive an update from the clerk. Actually, what I was going to talk about, we've already talked about earlier, because it was to do with Lorna's stuff from Sealy's, which Graham has already mentioned. I think Patrick had already mentioned, and we've already discussed it earlier, but it's the fact that we're on it, Bucks Enforcement are on it, and we continue to work on that.
Right, so I'd like to call an end to this meeting. Thank the members of the public who are able to join us tonight, and thank those councillors who can't be with us for the second part of the meeting. And thank you very much.